Moving forward in this module, we will next take a look at the class slides dealing with string comparisons. So make sure that you download the class slides if you haven't already, and the demonstration string comparison methods. Again, you're going to go into the assignment, download the file, and then you want to extract it. Okay, so in the presentation, a couple of things about comparing strings. When you are comparing strings, do not use equals equals to compare two strings. If you do this, it will compare the object references. So the underlying reference will be compared to determine if they're equal. So even though two strings may have exactly the same characters, using equals equals may not yield the correct results if it's not the same string, right? If it's not the same object. So make sure when the takeaway is when you are comparing strings and you want to know equality, use equals. So I could take string 1, compare it to string 2, and I use the equals method to determine if they're equal. Lastly, I'm going to repeat that. It's really important because I see it in the labs. People will use equals and then it doesn't work. This is a common source of bugs. You don't want to do this. Make sure that you're using equality, okay, the different methods, if you are comparing strings. Now, there are a number of different string methods that you can use. You can use equals, as I just mentioned. You can use equals, ignore case. You can use compare to. I'm going to be talking about that in the demo. You can be working with region match. I'm not going to get into region match, but you can read about that. Starts with, so you can find out whether it starts with a particular character, ends with particular characters. Okay, not going to cover that in the demo. You can look it up in the book. And then lastly, you could see index of, last index of, and the substring. Again, some of these we're going to be covering in the demo. Okay, so that takes us to the demo, and the demonstration that we're going to be using here is the demonstration demo chapter 14, string compare. So to do this demonstration, obviously we're going to have to go to NetBeans. And in NetBeans, I wanted to just show you when I want to open a project or close a project. Closing projects is the last project I was working on. Let's say I no longer need that. Just to kind of keep things tidy here, I can right-click on the project name and I can choose close. This is used if I want to come back and open it later. Realize there's also a delete option if you no longer want the project, but realize you are removing the project or given the option of remove the project. So, use that at your own discretion. I'll go ahead and I'll close this one. I'm going to click my open button, and I did extract the files into the NetBeans folder. And if you did the same, you should notice that demo chapter 14 string compare should be there. And within that, you should find your project. So I'm going to be calling 4 methods to test 5 different string methods. I'm going to be using equals, equals ignore case, compare to, index of, and last index of. And the way that I'm doing this is you'll notice right here in the main, I've kind of commented out 3 of them so that I could just focus on one at a time. So let me go ahead. I'm going to put a comment there, and we'll start at the top. Okay, so I delete the comment, and now I'm going to be calling a method called output equals strings, and I'm going to be passing in 2 strings. One is diamond with a capital D, and one is diamond with a lowercase d. Now realize that right here is the method, but sometimes you will have a very long list of methods in your project. If you wanted to move very quickly to a method, you can right-click the method name. Sorry, let me double-click it and right-click the method name. And then here I'm going to go to Navigate, go to Declaration. And you'll notice that this is just going to move me down to that particular method. Notice this method is going to accept 2 strings. Test string 1 and test string 2. So those are the parameters to this method. Here's what I'm passing, diamond and diamond. So diamond is going to be test string 1 with a capital D, and diamond with a lowercase d will be test string 2. You'll notice here this is nothing more than an if-else statement. Right? So I could have returned a Boolean, but the way that I set it up, I'm going to run an if statement, and if the two strings are equal, I'm going to tell you that the two strings are equal. If they're not equal, I'm going to say that they're not equal. Okay, so here you could see I'm saying the string s, right? So test string 1 is going to be equal if test string 1 equals test string 2. Here I'm using the equals method. If the letter by letter comparison of each string is identical and they are the same length, right? So no extra spaces and stuff going on, right? Then they are going to be equal. So they must match up exactly. If they don't match up exactly, then it will say that the strings are not equal. I'm going to go here. I'm going to run this particular file. And you'll notice it says the string diamond and diamond are not equal. If I change one of the diamonds so that the letters match, and then I run it again, you'll notice it says that the two strings are equal. And one last thing, if I add any spacing to it, you'll notice this changes the length, but it also changes the characters, right? This is not a character by character match because this character does not match a space at the end here. So let me save that, and you'll notice that it will again produce the not equal result, or not equal. So let me just reset everything back to what it was. Save it up. Always a good idea to rerun. And you'll notice that it says they're not equal. Okay, so we're good. So let's comment this method, and we will uncomment the next method. So this is going to be the output equals strings IC, IC standing for ignore case. We're going to test to see if these two strings are the same if the case is ignored. So I can, again, right click, could say navigate, and go to declaration or control B. And then you'll notice here we're doing the same thing we did before, passing in two strings, string 1 and string 2. Okay, but in this case, you'll notice instead of using equals, we're using equals ignore case. Now, obviously with these, you can swap the two strings. It doesn't make a difference which one appears where. Test string 1 could be here, or test string 2, and so forth. Right, but here what we're going to do is we're going to test it. So let's click run file. And you'll notice it says that diamond and diamond, diamond with a capital D, and diamond with a lowercase d, are equivalent if you ignore the case. So equals ignore case just takes any letters, okay, and it basically ignores the case. If we wanted to see exactly what's happening, of course, we can always go out to our string in the Java documentation. You can type equals or case. Here, this is nice. I click, goes to it. Right, so here it's saying it's going to return a Boolean, and it will compare a string to another string, ignoring the case consideration. They are considered equal if they are the same length and the corresponding characters in the two string are equal, ignoring the case. Okay. Realize that when you're doing this, a lot of people want to know, does it make them all uppercase or does it make them all lowercase? One of the things that you want to realize about methods is methods, we don't have to concern ourselves with how exactly things are done. All we have to know is, what does the method do? What am I required to give as an input? What arguments do I supply? They're fed in as parameters here. And then what is the result coming back? True or false? Okay, so in this exercise, realize that true or false is really what we're getting when we go here, right? When we go here and we say, if this is the case, we're getting back a Boolean value, true or false. Remember, every if statement has an expression that evaluates the true or false. So this is going to give us a true or false value. If it's true, it does this message. If it's false, it gives us this message. That's equals ignore case. Okay, so here what we're going to do is we're going to comment out the output equals string ignore case, and we will uncomment output compare to. Here we're going to be looking at the compare to method. And what compare to does is it will look at two strings and compare them letter by letter to determine if they are the same. Okay? What it can return for you is it can return a negative value if the first string is less than the second string. It can return a positive value if the first string is greater than the second value, and it will return a 0 if the two strings are equal. Now, what we mean by less than greater than is it will go to the first letter of the first string and the first letter of the second string. It compares the two. These two are equal, so far we are equal. Okay, if there was only one letter, it would return a 0. If there's more letters, what it will do is it'll go to the next letter. Notice this is index 1, this is index 1, right? It compares these two. If they are equal, we're still at 0. If this is the only two characters in the string, it returns that 0. Notice here what we have is we have a third character. Here we have a third character. When we compare these two characters, you'll notice that the letter T would be greater than the letter L. Now, how do we know T is greater than L? If you remember earlier, we went in and we took a look at the values, right? The Unicode values, UTF values that we have for encoding. So if we compare these two, the letter T has a numeric value that is greater than the numeric value that is associated with the letter L. As a result, T, it will say that bat is greater than ball. So let's test this out. I'm going to output compare to, use the control B to navigate there quickly, right? And you'll notice right here, now I'm in output compare to. You can see here's my two test strings. And it'll say the value of compare to is, so here I'm just trying to output what the value would be. And notice I'm looking for values here. Okay, if it's a -1, the first string is less than the second string. If it's a 0, they're two equal strings. If it's greater than 0, it will come down to the else statement, and it will display that the two strings, that the first string is greater than the second string. So let's go ahead and let's run our code here. Now you'll notice that it says the value of compare to is 8. You do not need to worry about where 8 comes from. It's a positive value, right? So it is going to tell us that bat is greater than ball. The T here is represented as being greater than the L here, and as a result, bat is considered a word that has a greater value than ball. Why do we care about that? Well, if we're trying to put these words in order, right, we might want to know that information, which word is greater than another word, so that bat comes after ball. Now realize that it does matter here what the order is. Where we were doing equal to, and think about it, if you have two numeric values and you say, is 2 equal to 2, right, it doesn't matter what side the 2 is on, what side of the equal sign the 2 is on. But if you're saying 2 is less than 3, you can't flip the numbers around and say 3 is less than 2 and get the same result. That's not correct. So you'll notice if I scroll up and I change the words that I'm sending in, right, I'll make this ball and this bat, it will make a difference. I could scroll down, and you'll notice now when I do the compare to, string 1 is ball, test string 2 is bat. If I right click, run, it tells me that the value of ball is less than the value of bat. Okay, so it's saying that now we have a -8 value. And lastly, if I scrolled up and I said bat and bat, save and run, now we have two strings that are identical, and you'll notice that the value of compare to, it returns a 0, and the two strings are considered equal. Now we'll comment this, we'll uncomment the final method, output locate happy birthday. Okay, so here what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be playing around with locating a letter. So I'm sending in the string happy birthday, and I'm sending in a character, which is the letter Y. Play around with, where does Y appear in the word happy birthday? Okay, I can double click on my word here, Control B, and you'll notice now if I go into this section here, this is output locate. I'm passing in a string, which is the word happy birthday, and I'm using test character as the letter Y, which is just a character. Notice here, I want to know where the first occurrence of my character is in the word. So where is the first character? Letter Y, which is test char, right? Looking here for a character, test char is the character. Here is the string that I'm looking for that character in, which is test string. And it's going to return the position. Okay, and the position is going to be returned by using the string name, the method name, so dot method, and then here I'm passing in what the character is that I want to find. Index of will find the first location of a character. Okay, so let's just do the first system out, and then we'll talk through the next one. Okay, I'll run the file. You can see that the first occurrence of the letter Y, character is a Y, in happy birthday, which is my test string, is at position 4. Remember, this is an index value, so we're looking at 0, 1, 2, 3, and Y appears at index 4. Now let's see what happens with the second piece of output. The second piece of output, we're saying the first occurrence of the word birth, right? So realize that index of doesn't just look for a single character, it can look for a string of characters, and that's what we're doing here. Now, oftentimes people will ask, why are we using the backslash? Remember, this is an escape character. It's when you want to use a quote for the character of the quote and not to use it for the purpose of ending a string. So I know that sounds a little confusing, but if I take away this backslash and this backslash, what's happening is it's treating this as a string, and this quote is the end of the string. That's not what I want. What I want is I want for it to recognize the word birth as a string in and of itself. Okay, so I'm going to, right here, a backslash, and right here, a backslash. And what this will do when it does the printing of the characters, it will use the double quote. This is going to treat the double quote for what it is, a double quote. And this is going to treat the double quote for what it is, the second double quote here. That's how we get the quotes in printf. Okay, I think the rest of it's pretty straightforward. What we're doing here is we're looking for the first occurrence of the word birth in the string birthday, or should say the first occurrence of the string birth in the string birthday. Happy birthday. So it's going to tell me what the position is. And notice I'm using the same exact method. I'm saying test string, give me the index of birth. And you'll notice down here at the bottom, it tells me that birth is found at position 6. So if I'm doing the counting, right, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then birth begins at character index 6. Index 6 all the way through to here is going to be birth. Okay, what if I change it and I say, instead of birth, I say Bertha? Right, so now I'll run, and you'll notice that it tells me that happy birthday's position is a -1. When it produces a negative value here, it did not find the string. So obviously, if it's a positive value, it's going to tell you the index value that it's located at. With a negative value, it tells you string was not found. So this is a quick, easy way you can determine whether or not a string is found within another string. Okay, lastly, just like we have the index of, we have this method called last index of. And this will find the last occurrence of a character or a string of characters in a particular string. So here what we're doing is the same thing we did before, but we're saying in test string, give me the last occurrence of the letter Y, the last index of the letter Y. So it looks through here and it says, okay, we've already done the counting. We know that the B is at index value 6. Let's keep going. Right here we're at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 is where the Y will occur. So it's returning the last index, or rather the last occurrence of Y, the last place where the Y appears, the last index value for Y is going to be at position 13.